and Levi, right? Who come from Leah. Right? So the idea really here is you need both. You need the vision and then
6 sons and 1 daughter.
yes, big time. Okay? All right, let's go into this now. Let me put this on. See, I'm talking too much. So who's the beautiful maiden who has no eyes? The Shema Yisrael. Okay? You become the beautiful maiden who has no eyes. So when you're doing this, you're supposed to get a vision. Because you have to block all of this. Okay? All of the world. You have to block the world because it's distracting. And focus on the vision of the oneness of God, who is all there is. You know, and only then can you get to Sof Maseh, to the end deed, which is Rachel. And the other thing was really interesting, which you're going to love this. Okay, I heard Rabbi Moshe Weinberger say Leah and Rachel, because we're talking about this week's parsha. So Leah and Rachel. Leah was hated, as you said, right? And Rachel was loved. So it's one represents Torah, and one represents Tefillah. So who represents Torah? Rachel. Everybody loves Torah. You can always find something that's interesting to read or learn about Torah. Mm-hmm. Praying, forget it. Okay? Okay? Leah is hated. Okay? Which means people, they have to pray. Okay. In any case, let me hand out these sheets if anybody doesn't have from last time. Okay? We're going to start here in this books, in my books here. Okay, we're starting on page 115. No, sorry. What the? We're supposed to be on a different thing. Chapter 7. Okay, sorry. Page 109 in these books, okay? We talked about, last time, was something very deep. And if you saw in the email that I sent to you, I say, it's good to be a chassid. I came from a school where it wasn't good to be a chassid, right? You're not allowed to be a chassid, okay?
Which means what?
A chassid, okay, I said that there's basically, in terms of the Jewish world, there's 2 types of Jews. You can also look at it 3 types. There's your Orthodox, conservative, and Reform. But now let's just look at, in the Orthodox, there's 2 types of Jews, right? There's Hasidim or Misnagdim.
Okay.
Do you know what a Misnagid?
They
Right?
don't call themselves Misnagdim.
No, everybody gave each other their names. I believe that the Reform gave the Orthodox their name as well. Okay? Yeah. So but the Reform, I think, gave themselves the name Reform. Okay? I don't think the Orthodox called it. You guys are Reform, right? I think they gave themselves that name. But in any case, Orthodox really just means right. It came from a court case many, many years ago, I think in Europe, where there was an Orthodox Jew and there was some other person, and they were the judge says you're Orthodox, which means you're right, basically, in the case. So ever since then, whatever. So in any case, there's Misnagdim and then there's Hasidim, and we learned about how do we understand the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum is the constriction. When God had to, so to speak, withdraw himself to make a creation something else other than him, to have something else other than him. So we learned that there were certain, and the Arizal's description was abstract geometric figures of a sphere, right? He withdrew himself in all around, and what was the empty space was in the shape of a sphere. And then he drew a line, a concentrated ray into that sphere, right? Very abstract things, and it's the whole argument of do you understand that literally or not literally. So if you understand that literally, that means we're in a vacuum and God is somewhere way out there, way past the Andromeda galaxy, okay? He knows what's happening, he can see, but he ain't here. And of course, there is some people who do write that and did say that, okay? And then there's the rest of the schools of Kabbalistic thought and the Hasidic masters who say nothing doing, no way. It's totally conceptual. It's an illusion, okay? It's an illusion. It has meaning, but it's an illusion nonetheless. In other words, it's the symptom that God, the fact that there's a place where God cannot be is ludicrous. It can't be, okay? And of course, how do we understand that? Then there's a text in the Zohar that we started last week, which is basically that there's two concepts. Sovev kol alamin, he surrounds all worlds. Umamale, and he fills all worlds. So you can understand that in the abstract figures of the sphere. Surrounds all worlds, he's around. There's a sublime, how does he call it? The way that he describes the light, he calls it transcendent. The transcendent light of God that transcends, surrounds. And then there's Mamale Kol Olamin, you'll look at that maybe as the ray, that he fills all worlds. Okay? So there's surrounding and filling. And then we try to understand what that means, because if there's no spot where God is not, why do we have such a difference? Right? Why do you have surrounding versus filling? What's this business? Right? But basically, according to the Hasidic masters and the Baal Shem Tov says, no, God is everywhere. He's in everything. So he's in the rocks and the stones, and that's what drove the Misnagdim crazy. That you can't say God is in the rocks and the stones, even though it's kind of interesting how in this week's Parsha, if everybody's followed this week's Parsha, with Jacob sleeps, right? He puts a bunch of stones around his head, and he wakes up and it's one stone. Because the verse says it's one stone.
Yep.
What happened? First it was a lot of stones, then it became one stone. So does anybody know the Midrash? You remember the Midrash?
All the
The
stones
stones.
wanted to be the one that was under his head.
They all fought for each other.
They all wanted to have the tzaddik, this righteous man, put his head under him,
So
right?
You went from Avnei to Evan.
Evan, right?
I think it represents the 12 tribes.
I don't know if it was 12 stones. I wasn't counting. I wasn't there to count. Okay, thank you. So makes sense, okay?
There's a lot of stones in this Parsha.
Yeah, how do you like that? It's
Yeah.
good. So it's good that we're in this
Jacob
topic
is
because
a-
we're going to talk about stones.
Jacob is a stone man. He has all these stones in his
Stones.
You know, I don't know what the deal was. It's kind of interesting. You know, I have used once a rock for a pillow. It wasn't pleasant.
What about the?
It was not pleasant.
The
I
big-
even had the pillow on top of the rock, and it wasn't pleasant.
Then you have the big stone when he meets Rachel.
Yeah, very
Another
good.
Stone. And there's another stone later on.
And then you had the Rolling Stones from the Chaga.
Yeah, that's it. I forgot about it. Them.
So in any case, so then I forgot where I was. Jacob and the stones. So they were 12 stones, and all the stones were arguing. They all wanted to put, what, just stones arguing? What's going on here? Stones are having a conversation. Okay, they have a vibration. They have a desire. There's something within the stone that they want to become elevated. So God says, okay, we'll make you one stone. You happy now? Yeah, okay, we're happy. Right? He molded all the stones into one stone. Okay, and they're all happy. Okay, they all get to get elevated. Okay, so the idea here is, of course, obviously there's something within the stones. Now the Misnagdim are going to say we don't really understand that. Okay, we don't deal with that. Okay, but of course the followers of the Baal Shem Tov, of course, there's godliness in everything. The sticks, the stones. God is behind every single thing. And that's a huge difference that we spoke about last time, and it needs to be reiterated in terms of how to relate to God. If you can't relate to God fills all worlds, then you're only in the aspect of your relationship with God that He surrounds all worlds. He's out there. So you're praying to a God out there, and like that, instead of understanding that it's within. Okay? So when you know that it's within, there's a much more deeper, warmer, intimate, sincere relationship because you know God is within you. And we're going to get to more of that later, okay? So now we are on page, remind me, He fills all worlds. We got to explore that a little bit, okay? Here, and on this, right, on this sheet here, you see, have it here, I think it's the third paragraph, and He fills all worlds, okay? But here's a little introduction. We are left with the fourth question above, okay, because he had a bunch of questions. How does God's immanent diminished light energy which fills all worlds influence and create, meaning grasp, the world which it fills. Okay, because we said God's immanent, which means filling, is diminished light and energy. It's filling all the worlds. It's filling all of space, all of matter. How does it influence? How does it create? How is it grasping the world which it fills? Because we said before, it's so deeply hidden that really we can't grasp it. We can't grasp the real godliness behind all physical matter. Okay? Maybe, no, we'll get to it. It's known that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, right, as he was lying on his deathbed, he saw the beam above his head, and he said, look, I see the letters. He was able to see the letters, which is like the spiritual DNA of the beam, which is, we know that everything is made up of letters. Okay? Every single thing in the world, we'll get to that, is made up of the letters. So he was able to see the letters, but still to see behind the letters is a whole other ballgame that we can't see. It has to be blocked from us. Okay? Otherwise we'll zap back into infinity. Okay? And we've got to stay who we are, because we have to remain separate entities to some degree, right? In order to fulfill our purpose in creation. So our discussion in section 5 has also left us with a further issue that requires clarification. If God's transcendent light, his energy, is like the thought of creation, we'll get to that in a second, which actually powers and encompasses all of creation, all of existence, why is a further light, an energy which fills all worlds, necessary? Why do we need the filling of all worlds? Don't we already have a direct creative divine power? In other words, if you have that fact that God surrounds all worlds, why do you have to have this concept of filling all worlds? Why do we even need both concepts? Okay, so he's going to explain. Okay, he fills all worlds is the life force which clothes itself within the created being. It is powerfully contracted within it according to the intrinsic nature of the created being, which is finite and limited in quantity and quality. Okay? So now here, and if you look at the note here on the page 110, okay? At the level of the light energy which encompasses all worlds, the universe exists at God's level. It is abstract and infinite. It's way beyond. Even the angelic creatures in the other dimensions cannot grasp that infiniteness of God that is so beyond. The light energy which fills all worlds provides a creative force at the universe's level, which is tangible and finite. Okay? So there's abstract and infinite versus tangible and finite. So here he gives a great, I underlined this because it gives us a much more clear idea or concept. The light energy which encompasses all worlds is like God's creative thought. The light energy which fills all worlds is like God's creative speech. So we have thought, word. Don't forget, every single thing in Torah is thought, word, thought. God has a thought. He translates it into a word. And from that word, it's supposed to be recreated in your mind the same thought. That's how it works. Thought, God's thought, puts it into words, the Torah. And then from those words, the end goal is to create the same thought. A guy who asked me once, well, wait a minute, why did we even have speech? Right? Why did God even create the world with these 10 utterances of speech? Right? Couldn't he just create it with a thought? Right? Okay, I don't know if I have an answer. Okay? I do know one thing, that God willed for an expression like this. Okay? There has to be an expression. Maybe you'll say also it has to be a little bit more toned down. If it's in the world of thought, like he says here, okay, look at the next paragraph. Both energies of thought and speech work together. If the universe would be created only from the light energy which encompasses all worlds, like i.e. the thought, it would have no real form or limits. Too hard to grasp. but thoughts can't communicate. Do people ever do this telecommunication, right? Except for Star Trek? I know it's in Star Trek. Okay. But even then, it has to be translated into words. Does it not? No?
They have Through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
It talks about telepathy and how it's like proven.
It has to become a word, though, doesn't it, in the mind even? Or not?
I can show you.
Okay.
Yeah, but we just-
So here he's saying, if it was just encompasses all worlds, it would have no real form or limits, but the light energy which fills all worlds alone cannot create the universe, just as you will have nothing to speak about if you do not think first. In other words, the way we operate is we think a thought, and then we express it, right? That's how it works. In other words, you can't have just an expression without a thought. Actually, we can. My kids are great at psychobabble. And mumble, my daughter's going to be a professor of mumble. She's going to teach a mumble 101, I'm telling you. So, you're right, you can have without, I'm sure there was a thought behind it. I just don't understand what was wrong with the expression part, okay? Mumble. So this provides the basic answer to our question B, which was, how does God's immanent, diminished light energy, which fills all worlds, influence and grasp the world which it fills? And the answer we've just learned is that this light energy influences and creates by what? Becoming embodied within the particular creation. The light energy is tailor-made to the creation through being heavily diminished within it. The level of diminishment depends on the particular qualities of the individual created thing, okay? And we're going to get this. In order to understand this concept more clearly, the Tanya will elaborate at some length. First, we need to understand why each creation is different, requiring to have its own different type of light energy to create it. Everything has different vibrations. The rocks have their vibrations, right. The trees have their vibrations, man has his vibrations, okay? So here he goes. Every created entity is totally finite, both in size and quantity. Its quality, meaning its value and worth. Its quality, meaning its value and worth. At the most basic level, the creations differ from each other in two variables, quantity and quality. Okay? And the Tanya offers a simple illustration. Okay? For example, the quantity of the sun. It has a body. And I didn't Google this. I was going to attempt it to last night, but I figure I'll just go with his words. That he wants to say that the body of the sun is 167 times the size of the earth. Is that about right? Okay, I don't know. I remember World Book Encyclopedia. They had a big, huge globe and a bunch of marbles being stuck in. It was like the size of the earth and the ratio. And I thought it was more. Okay? So, in any case, we'll go with what he's saying. It's limited in terms of its size. Okay? That's called quantity. It also has a quality. And its quality and value is its light. Also. And its power of illumination also, it has a limit. Since it cannot shine endlessly, for it is a finite creation. Eventually, even the scientists say the sun will burn out. Right? The sun is limited in dimensions, quantity, and its function quality. It also has a limited time during which it can fulfill its function. Similarly, all creations are totally finite. We're in a finite world. As the Talmud indicates by stating that a journey from heaven to earth takes 500 years. Now, nobody will be able to explain that to you. Okay? The Kabbalists, of course, do. They talk about sfirot. That is 5 sfirot. Whatever that means. 5 levels of consciousness.
How many parsangs is that?
Yeah, exactly. Right? What's a parsang? You know? I couldn't understand this. You know, from earth to heaven takes 500 years. Is that through a wagon or is that you walking? Okay? So, in any case, whatever it means, the idea really here is there's a limit. Okay? The hallmark of divine light energy that fills all worlds is that it adopts some of the limitations of the finite entity that it fills. This is an interesting thing, okay? Again, when we say God fills all worlds, it's going to take on the qualities of whatever it is that finite entity that it is filling. in order to become properly embodied in it. Okay? This being the case, the divine energy embodied in all creation must be greatly and formidably diminished, because God's infinite light must first be diminished repeatedly and formidably to a point where its power, its light, can bring about total finite creations. In other words, it's totally hidden. God is there, but it's massively hidden. Okay? But there's a huge thing in just knowing that it's there, right? If you just know that it's there, there's already a connection. The power of the mind goes beyond all things. Okay?
Google says 109 times.
Only 109 times?
Maybe I'm not looking it up right. But
Okay. It could be that there's a conspiracy, Google conspiracy too. Okay, watch out. Okay?
See, they're blocking it with all the conservative ads.
Hey,
Okay.
You saw that?
So we have Sovev going around all worlds. We cannot grasp. No spiritual being even can grasp God's isness. There's no concept for the essence of God, which would be more of the, what we call it, the transcendent nature of God, the isness that no one created. And as soon as you think you have a concept that is not, it is beyond that concept, okay? And then there's what's filled all worlds, which is basically God is infused with all of creation, infusing all of creation, but it's very, it takes on the limited qualities of whatever it is that it is infusing, okay? So now we have something, though, in between. So we have two kinds of light, surrounding, and then you'll have infusing, and then you'll have the go-between. What is in between those? Right? So here, going on the bottom of page 111, God did not make a direct transition from the light energy which encompasses all worlds to the energies that fill all worlds in their present condition. He first produced an intermediate phase, which was the source of the energy which now fills all worlds. In the intermediate phase, God's light was diminished in the direction of the world's limitations, but it was not diminished enough to power all the detailed creations found in the universe. Okay? And what he's talking about, simply, the intermediate phase is the energy of the 10 creative statements of Genesis. If you look in chapter 1, once again, there's 10 statements where it says, and God said, and God said, and God said. God said, let there be light. God said, let there be a firmament. As we know from the very beginning of the very first chapter of this section, that it says, Le'olam Hashem davarcha nitzav b'shamayim, forever God, your word stands in the heavens, which means the letters of those 10 statements of creation, not like us. It's not like we say a statement and walk away. The statement was said. It's those statements are still giving every single thing its animation. Okay? All of those 10 statements of the creation are very dynamic. As a matter of fact, for those who were at my Sefer Yetzirah, the homework class, because they're so creative and so powerful, and plus, actually, the 32 mystical paths are in the first chapter of Genesis. 32 is a dynamic number, means heart, lave. But if anybody wants something, if you want to bring about a manifestation of something, so you're supposed to think, contemplate what you want, and then read the chapter of Genesis, because you're essentially reading the 10 statements and the 22 letters making the 32 paths of creation. Even if you just hit the first 10 statements, those 10 statements of creation, you're hooking up to the roots of it, okay? But if you look at those 10 statements, just to cut to the chase here, right? If every single thing is coming from those 10 statements, and God said, let there be light. God said, let there be a firmament. And those things are giving every single thing in our creation its animation. It didn't say in any of those statements, and God said, let there be a stone. It didn't.
no, didn't say.
I'm sure he thought about Mick Jagger. Okay. But
I'm sure.
I don't know what he was thinking. Okay.
Yeah, or even a river.
Every single thing comes from those statements of creation, but it doesn't say in those statements a rock. It doesn't talk about a stone or a rock in there. Hey, Rabbi, what's the deal? So this is what it means by it's a intermediate. Even if you would hook into those 10 statements, they're so sublime. They're so high we would zap out of existence if we were to see the energy of those 10 statements of creation. It's really what happens is God has to filter from those 10 statements, as we're going to see, okay? He does what's called, they use gematrias. Gematrias are basically if you use the numerical value. So automatically it's a step removed. If you take the letters, because we don't have Roman numerals, right? We use letters for numbers.
Right.
Aleph is 1, Beit is 2, Gimel is 3. So if you take them and already you moved it into another phase, another realm, what do you call it?
Realm.
Whatever, you've already diluted it. Right? If you translated it, you transferred it into a number, it's already diluted. Right? And if you dilute it again by switching a letter with another letter, or adding in this and adding that, you've diluted it again. And then again, and then again. And when you switch letters and move them around in combinations, you're diluting them. Every time there's a move of a letter, it's a dilution. Okay? So that's why they are very high, the actual letters themselves. The interesting thing is if you look at one of those statements of creation is, let us make man. Right? And that's direct. That's very high. Right? And that happens to be us. Okay? So there's already a different level that man is on in terms of that connection, okay, to the 10 statements. But mostly everything filtered down and obscured and made to be something physical through permutations of letters, it becomes then congealed into the existence that we see like in a rock, okay?
Was there anything let us create mountains or
No.
earth? There was
Let the
something.
dry land appear. You're right. Dry land.
So
And
rocks-
seas and oceans.
So the rocks come from
Oh, it doesn't say rock, Rabbi. We got to be exact on the word. Where's the rock?
moving it along.
I don't see
We're
you
dry-
saying rock, God. I don't
We're
see the
diluting
rock.
it.
What?
We're diluting.
Gets diluted, right? Because if you were to see the real concept of dry land and ocean is, you'd go crazy, okay? Because it would be so high. Because, of course, it means something much different. Every single thing in this world has a counterpart in the spiritual realm. Every single thing has a counterpart in the spiritual realm, including you, okay? When you see a stone down here, there's a stone, there's something of the dimensions of the letters, of the energies of a stone in the higher realm. Yes?
The word rock, it's strange that that's the word that y'all are talking about because lots of times in the Tanakh, Hashem is called a rock. Thou art a rock.
Sewer, different rock. The name, it's very important, you're right. But here we're talking about the word Evan. And we'll get to it, okay? The word Evan, which means stone. It means stone. He picked Evan, okay? And we'll get to it. Okay? All right? So the intermediate phase is the energy of the 10 statements of creation. In Genesis, an immanent fills all worlds type of energy, which was still not sufficiently diminished and differentiated to power the detailed world as we know it. Okay? He says, for the source of this energy, which now fills all worlds, is the breath of God's mouth, which he dressed in the 10 creative statements of the Genesis story in the Torah. Okay? Breath of his mouth, ruach piv. Now, when we express things, we always borrow our terminology from the way we function, and we can understand things in the spiritual realm. It's called borrowed terminology. We have two things that come out of our mouth. Well, some people have a lot of other stuff coming out of their mouth. But let's say the basic human people.
Okay.
Basic humans, okay? We have a breath, and then you articulate the breath. You have a voice, a sound, and then you articulate the sound in one of the 5 places in the mouth. Okay? Right? So when he speaks of the ruach piv, it's coming from a very high place. It's very high ruach piv. We just go, okay. So it's just a sound, but it doesn't have any articulation. But only when it's cut through the 10 statements of creation is there something more tangible. Okay? So there's something even more sublime, which is called the ruach piv. Okay? Which is the breath of his mouth. That, as he says here, if not for the subsequent diminishment, the breath of God's mouth from the Genesis story, could have extended infinitely and endlessly, creating worlds infinite and endless in quantity and quality, sustaining them forever, and our limited world would not have been created at all. Okay? Here he goes. If the universe had been created from the energy of the 10 statements of Genesis without any further diminishment, the divine creative power would not have absorbed enough limitation to create real finitude. How do I say finitude? Finitude? Finitude. There would be some form, quantity or quality, but in infinite proportions. God needed a finite world. Okay? So in a parenthetical note, the Tanya explains why the initial emergence of God's speech, the source of light and energy which fills all worlds, still remains infinite. Okay? So he says, for just as God is called without end, Ein Sof, so too all his attributes and direct actions are by their nature without end. For he and his attributes that are he causes are one. His attributes are infinite like him. Right? And which his attributes, let's say, chesed, rachamim, compassion, and all of his other holy attributes in their sublime state are infinite also. Because it's the way of infinite to make things infinite. How can you make a finite world from infinite? He only knows infinite. It's very hard, right? So any direct action of God, even that action, is to make a finite world will be infinite because God himself is infinite. He only knows infinite. How do you make something finite out of infinite? So and when the infinite energy of these attributes dresses in divine speech, which is the breath of his mouth, in order to create the world, so it says, for he spoke and it came to be, that's a verse. And then by means of his infinite attribute of chesed, the world was built, olam chesed yibane, and beruach piv kol tzva'am, or b'dvar Hashem beruach piv hanaaseh, kli ulevush lechesed zeh. Since God's speech, the breath of his mouth, was rendered an instrument and a garment for his attribute of chesed. Okay? Here you have an interesting, the concept here of levush, of garment, and vessel. Okay? So God's speech in the 10 statements of Genesis is a vehicle of expression for God's creative energy. Since that creative energy is the infinite attribute of chesed, the vehicle itself cannot completely veil that infinitude. The result is a somewhat immanent and applied light energy that is more concrete and tends more towards finitude than the abstract light energy which surrounds all worlds. But it is still infinite nonetheless. In other words, the point here, what he wants to say is, those 10 statements are so much like God, they're also almost in an infinite plane. Okay? Those 10 statements which make or is constantly making creation. And then we're saying those 10 statements are we'll call it the go-between, fills all worlds and surrounds all worlds. Okay? Okay. What did he have to do? He had to constrict it, so that light and energy could leave the infinite level of the breath of his mouth and become veiled, diminished to a finite level. And this was achieved through applying letter combinations to the text of the 10 statements. So here we get into what we call tzirufehem, switching letters and combining letters, doing multiple combinations in order for the world to exist in the way that we seem to enjoy it now. And it's all done through the combinations of letters. But the interesting thing here to point out too is you have to develop a relationship with the Hebrew letters, with the form of the letters, as well as the sounds of the letters. Okay? All of this bleeds into one thing so important, and that is the technique of the Baal Shem Tov. His meditative technique, in terms of his prayer and his tefillah, was always you have to try to get the words to shine as much as possible in your mind's eye. And if you can't do a whole word in Hebrew, you can't meditate on a word, just do the word Baruch, right? If you try to picture the letters in your mind's eye, okay? It has a very, very powerful significance, as well as the of the energy, which is the vibration of the letters, okay? We are here to elevate things, okay? We're down here, interestingly enough, if we remember this week's Parsha also, okay? I think the only place where there is a prophecy where there's such a impactful imagery of the entire Chumash, I don't think there's any other ones. You know, there's a lot of prophecy, Avram, Yitzchak, they're all getting prophecy. But here is a prophecy where it comes in an image. The image of the ladder, Jacob's ladder, the dream of the ladder. What is it with that ladder? Okay? When you think about it. And the interesting thing is I heard a question based on that ladder, which is, he's dreaming of this ladder, and the entire world, you know, is like kind of puzzled and interested, you know, to find out what's about this ladder. And the interesting thing is, what did he see in the ladder? What was the thing about the ladder? He saw angels going up
And falling,
and going down.
Right.
based on all our callous.
Right. But the interesting thing is they ask a question. You know, angels are in heaven. Why did it start off with angels going up and then coming down? Why shouldn't be they coming down and going up? Why did it start off with going up?
Because they were surrounding him and then going up.
Angels come from heaven.
I
If you're
know.
in a prophetic dream, classically angels come from heaven.
But these
Well, who
were
said-
the angels of the Holy Land that were accompanying him.
Okay, that's the idea. That there's an understanding on there, but just to get into more conceptual. Okay, you're right. One commentary does say there were angels that were escorting him in the land of Israel. They don't leave Chutz La'aretz. They don't have a passport or a visa. They can't leave. Not even a green card. Okay? The angels of the land of Israel don't leave Israel. And there's a different set of angels which will greet him on the other side. That would be great, except for he ain't on the border.
Mhm.
Okay, he's sleeping in Har HaMoriah. And you can use it, okay, it's prophetic in that way, just to give that kind of idea of the angels. By the way, you know, my Rosh Hashiva always said, Gentiles, they don't even touch the ground of the land of Israel. You're not going to like this. You're going to kill me for this, but that's
Go ahead.
What?
There's angels which slip underneath their feet. They're not even...
Under the Gentile.
Uh-huh.
So that they can't touch
That they
the
can't
ground.
touch the
I don't
land of
know
Israel.
why. Maybe they didn't apply for a visa. Okay? I don't know. Maybe there's some... But
About
basically,
angels.
my Rosh Hashiva says they do not even touch the ground. There's an angel... But, of course, you know, so... however you want to understand that. I don't know. You know. I'm just telling you what my Rosh Hashiva
When we go to Israel, we touch the ground.
Yes, the ground, I'll tell you, that's unbelievable. Us in Eretz Israel, you know, people think you can have Judaism without Eretz Israel, and you can't. You can't. And when we say grace after meals, we're out here in Houston, or wherever you are.
Tell that to all the liberal Jews.
And we
in
say
this
the
country.
second blessing is Al Haaretz v'Al Hamazon. Blessed are you, Hashem, for the land and for the food. Why does it just bless for the food? What is this? I got to throw the land in there. You can't. Every single blessing that comes to this world comes through the land of Israel. Every single blessing comes through the land of Israel. The land of Israel is the embassy of the next world. It's from another dimension that was plopped here. Okay? It looks like land, smells like land, tastes like land. We fight over it like land. But it's really an embassy from a spiritual dimension, the entire land. Okay? And all of the stuff that comes through all the entire world comes through the land of Israel. Okay? So how did I get to the land of Israel? The ladder.
The ladder.
So classically it works like this, and it's a bizarre episode. I finally understand this other verse in Genesis that has been puzzling me for years. Okay? Why do the angels come up first and then go down? Classically, angels do come from heaven. Okay? So the idea here is every single thing that comes into this world first has to start off with an elevation from us. We spoke about it before in previous classes. It's called Maim Nukvin, the feminine waters, a mist, okay? An energy, a vibe of good deeds, we send up. Those are the angels. We start the ball. We get the ball rolling. Some people are waiting for Mashiach. Okay, he may tarry. We're still waiting, but I think there needs to be a little bit of more of a spark. Nothing happens in this world if there was no prayer first. Prayer, specifically. The ladder is the symbol of prayer. Okay? Or any good deed. Okay? It says in the very beginning of Genesis when Adam was there, right? And it says, just before he made Adam, just before he says, God did not make, there was no trees and no grass, right? Because there was no rain, because there was no man to work the ground.
You're in the second chapter now.
Yeah, second chapter. Sorry. Second chapter. Got me.
Don't have to
There
hold
was
me.
no, God did not bring rain because there was no man to work the ground, right? And then all of a sudden there's this weird verse out of nowhere. Now there was a mist that came up and watered the ground. And then the next verse goes, and then he formed man out of the ground, right? And apparently the idea here is that the Zohar brings down, if the trees were subterranean, they didn't break through the surface, because God made them the third day. He said, let there be trees and grasses, but they were all just underneath, because there was no rain. God is not going to bring rain if there's nobody to appreciate it. So here comes Adam, a little dry here, wakes up in a desert. Gee, this is wonderful. Okay? We need some rain, and then the rain comes and goes, oh, thank you, God, for this rain. There's a bestowal from above. God wants to give, but there has to be a vessel. What is the vessel? To appreciate, right? That makes the vessel. Biggest way to make a vessel is to have, thank you, God, for the rain. God is not going to give rain unless there's somebody there who can appreciate the rain. When we pray, we build a vessel in order for there to be a bestowal from above. Okay?
You're saying that the Garden of Eden was not there? That Adam had-
Actually, Adam was created out of the Garden of Eden, and he had to be coerced to
So
go
there
into
wa-
the garden.
So there was
Like,
something.
why'd you come into this garden? And Adam's going, I don't know about that. What's in there? Right? He had to no, it's going to be good for you. Come on in.
So it was there before him.
He did. In the first chapter of Genesis, it says God created the garden.
But you
of
said
Eden.
nothing could be created
No,
without
second
man
chapter.
to work it.
What?
You said nothing could be created without man to
No,
work it.
nothing. The rain would not come, and the trees and grass would not sprout unless there was rain, and there had to be man to pray for rain, to appreciate the rain, right? In other words, there was not going to be rain until there was somebody to appreciate it.
I heard you, but the Garden of Eden was there.
It was potential. It
was
wasn't
not created
actual.
because he
No,
prayed
it
for
doesn't
rain.
say-
Could be no. The Garden of Eden did not sprout until it rained.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go with that for a construct for right now.
So is
If
that
we
why-
find something else out later, okay.
So is this why Yagobian's posting about praying for rain when we
Well,
do
that's a day to pray for
chakras?
rain also. It happened was it Thursday night? I think Thursday
The importance of praying for rain.
Thursday night was it was Thursday, right? I don't remember.
remember.
The 5th, the night of the 5th.
It's the.
The night of the 5th is where in Chutz
Thursday.
La'aretz, when you're outside of Israel, you have to start making a prayer for rain.
I think it's
Does that have any
It's-
connection, or is it
Mincha.
just?
Yes, because we're talking about it right now.
It's
That's the
Mincha,
connection.
December 4 Mincha.
What?
Thanks.
I got you. Great.
It was Mariv on December 5th.
Mincha, December 4 is supposed to be.
That would be Wednesday.
Because it was a leap year.
Oh, leap year, December 5,
Got
Mincha.
it. Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. So in any case, the idea here is Jacob's ladder works the same. There has to be a element that rises from within us, our good deeds, our prayers. It creates a good energy. Just like this, that's the cycle. That's how it works. Okay, this is Rabbi Haber said. It's a cycle, right? You know, the clouds, how do clouds, the water has to evaporate first, and then it forms clouds. It has to come from below.
And so that's why the angels go up before they come down.
Yeah.
Clever.
Okay? So the idea here is that we have to go ahead and create that. Now, how do we do that? Okay, like I said, the Baal Shem Tov's whole technique was connecting to the elements of creation. Okay? And it works through vibration. Even if you don't understand, there's a couple books where you could read it in Hebrew and you don't have to understand it, but the vibration it has, profound spiritual effect, okay? That's Tehillim, Chumash, and Zohar, okay? But he says here, the form of the letters themselves are much more up to the root and the essence. This comes from the Ramak. No, this is actually from the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cordovero. So let's say if you can picture in your mind's eye the form of the letters. So therefore, what are you doing? You are connecting to the root and the essence of the light more than, let's say, would be connecting to their numbers. Okay? Numbers is already a step removed. People like gematrias. They love it. But the idea here is the forms of the letters are much more dynamic. Okay? Because they are, and I'm only talking Hebrew here. Okay? Because that was the language that God made the universe in. Okay? So when we connect with those, we're connecting to a root. And we're connecting to our root. By the way, the Baal Shem Tov does say that if you want to wake someone up in the morning, you have to whisper in their ear their Hebrew name. Because that is their essence of who they are. It doesn't work for my teenage son. But everybody else it seems to work. Okay?
What did you say a moment ago? You said Tehillim and Zohar, and between them you said another book.
Chumash.
Oh.
Or Tanakh. Okay?
But now,
We have to start to become familiarized with the forms of the letters. Okay? We only have a few minutes, so I got to jump to the idea of how do we get to stone? Because we talk about this intermediate phase. Okay? And there's something really dynamic here that I do have to get to you.
okay.
I'm on the opposite side of this. Oh, what page are you on here? We're going to skip to page 116. Okay?
Okay.
So it's going to be, I'm not going to read this because it's better that I say it out. If you look at the word Evan, it is spelt with 3 letters. Aleph, Vet, and Nun Sofit. Evan. I don't have a pen. You have a pen?
Mhm.
Pen.
I'll tell you when-
Okay. And I need a piece of paper too. Anyone got a blank?
Oh, well, you're gonna have to use purple.
Okay, fine. Here. Evan is spelled with an aleph, a vet, and a nun. Now, if you take the aleph and separate it, it's a ben. Now, ben is a very significant number. If you translate it into numbers,
42.
it is the number of 52. If you're ever in a Sephardic synagogue and they're auctioning off the Aliyah, and people go, 52, right? Why 52? Where are they getting these numbers from, right? You're going to know. I'm going to share with you now where they're getting these numbers from, okay? If you take the name of Yud K Vav K, okay? The name of Yud K Vav K, Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. If I write out the sound of a Yud, that's the letter of the first name of the name of God, right? That's the first letter of the name of God. Yud is, if I write it out, is Yud, Vav, and Dalet. That is a Yud. Yud, right? Right? Yud. Now, Hey could be spelled, if I spell out Hey, could be spelled out 3 different ways. It could be Hey Yud. It could also be Hey Aleph. It could also be Hey Hey. If I go Hey, sounds like a Hey. Hey Aleph, Hey, and Hey Hey, Hey Hey Hey. Okay, is Hey. Okay, okay. Now Vav can also be written 2 different ways, 3 different ways, and Hey also could be spelled. Okay, so now let's say I'm just going to circle these letters just so that you know what I'm doing. If you see the letters that I've circled, that's Yud K Vav K. That's the name of God. We're not allowed to pronounce it. But I'm spelling out each letter. Yud, Yud Vav Daled. Hey, Hey Yud. Vav, I wrote Vav here, Vav Yud Vav. And the final Hey is Hey and Yud. If I add up the numerical value of all of these, it ends up being
52.
72. We're not there yet. 72. So if you're in a Sephardic synagogue and they're auctioning off the Kohen Aliyah and you go 72, or you hear that, You understand. By the way, this corresponds to the world of Atzilut, the highest of all realms. Okay? And there's all Kabbalistic reasons why it has all those yuds in it. Okay? And 72 is the numerical value of chesed, kindness. 72 is chesed. Okay? Now then there's another one. And we call it for short Ab. Ab, 72, if I put that into numerical, is Ayin Bet, which is, Ayin Bet is Ab. Ab. Okay?
No.
No?
No.
Just Ayin Bet. It's a number. Now I could spell also Yud K Vav K another way. We're trickling down from Atzilut to Bria, then Yetzirah, then to Asiya. The next one is the world of Bria. It has its own permutation, way to write out God's name, and that's pronounced Yud K. And the Vav is changed now. Vav is spelt with a Vav Aleph Vav. Everything is the same, Yud and K and Vav, just like it was by the first one, number one. And now, but the Vav is spelled differently, the Vav Aleph Vav. Now, if I add up the numerical value of this, it is 63. Sag.
And that represents what?
Bina.
Bina.
Judgment. We're not too cool.
Right.
By the way, these things, it's so deep because you understand these numbers are cycled throughout the year. There are 40, you'll see it. There's 72 days of Chesed. It's like the days from Passover to Shavuot. The days of the summer is 63. It's hot. Esav. It's like judgment, dinim. Okay? And then you'll have the 45 days of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, right? And then you'll have finally, which we're going to get to in a minute. Okay, then you'll have another way to spell out God's name, and that's a different, almost trickling down, okay? Basically now what I did was the Heys are spelled differently. It's a Hey Aleph and a Hey Aleph, okay? And this is Ma, very important. This is called Ma, 45. And then there's the final way to write out God's name.
And what is that? 45.
45 is the gematria of Adam, man.
No, I mean, you have...
Oh, we're not there yet. Booby.
Asset, judgment, and what is this one?
Tiferet, beauty. Or we'll call it Zer Anpin, small face. We'll call it infinite light, Ein Sof. For us, okay?
Another question, the 72 for Chesed, was that Bina?
No, that's Chochmah.
Chochmah?
Yeah. And then there's Bina. Then there's Zer Anpin, small face. And then you'll have Malchut, which is Ben, here. So now if I do this now, if I write out God's name like this, okay? Well, we'll pass it around, okay? This is Yud, Vav, Dalet. They're all the Yuds are spelled the same. This is Hey, Hey, Vav, and Hey, and Hey. The letters are actually doubled. And this has the numerical value of Ben. If you're ever, these are very dynamic and very basic in Kabbalistic doctrine. The Ab Sagma Ben, you really can't move to second base without it. You can't even get on first base, really. Okay? Without knowing your Ab Sagma Ben. Okay? These are represented by the 4 dimensions of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. Okay? Asiya, of course, now Ben. Let's just get into the Evan. Okay? Now, so you see, obviously, what happens here. We took God's name, we spelled it out. And we have the numerical value of 52. Now, what's the Aleph? Okay? So the Aleph is also, you can translate Aleph and do that differently. If I take the Aleph, I took that. Okay. If you take the Aleph is made up of 3 letters. Maybe you're not familiar with that. Aleph is actually made up of 3 letters. Yud and a Vav and a Yud. Yud and a Vav and Yud actually spell out the gematria of God's name, Yud, Vav, and Yud. Because this is like a Yud, this is a Vav, and this is another Yud. Okay? But if I spell out Yud, Vav, and Yud, if I spell out those,
26.
you end up with the same numerical value of Evan, of 52, 53. Okay? You'll end up with 53. The idea here is that he explains here is, you see how things have to transpose. In other words, Evan, within Evan, there's a name of God that's in the very letters of the word Aleph, Vet, and Nun. Okay? But happens to be, it's been transformed. Okay? It's been synced down or trickled down into the form that we have of an Aleph, Bet, and a Nun. Interesting thing I remember about an Av and Evan also, very strong, is if you take just the first two letters of Aleph, of Evan, Aleph and Vet, you have Av, and then the last two letters is Ben. Av and Ben.
Son.
So the idea of an Evan is something very strong. Just to understand that there's energies that are behind everything in creation. And the idea here is to familiarize yourself, if I say it correctly, I'm not, with the forms of the letters because they are the roots of everything. So you have to your homework is to write out your name in Hebrew, okay? And you have to meditate on that, okay? Whatever your name is in Hebrew, what's your name in Hebrew? Miriam. It's of course a very strong name, Miriam, okay? Mem, Resh, Yud, Mem, right? Right? And just meditate on that and then try to get it to shine and then try to get yourself into a mode of silence and try to be open to whatever thoughts in terms of your potential. What can you be doing? What you're supposed to be doing, okay? Because our names, like I said, the Baal Shem Tov says you could whisper, right? Is the essence of who we are. It tells a lot about our mission and what we're supposed to be doing here, okay?
See, Evan is 53.
52.
52 plus 1. This is the numeric
What's the
about
extra?
1. This is 2. This is 50.
Why is it plus 1?
52 plus 1 is 53. 52 plus
Yeah.
1 is
Well, how
6.
can we add one?
Oh, if I do Yud, Vav, I think it's Vav, Vav, okay?
No,
This is 20,
Just something like
that's
using
20,
comparison.
and this is,
And it's here during
if I
that
do,
time.
that's 40, plus this is 12, plus 12, this is 13.
53.
60, wait a minute.
But
That's
this is-
53.
It's
Right,
53.
53,
So
yeah.
this is 50.
This is 50, this is 2,
Two,
this is 1.
52,
Yeah, but
53.
see, we separate this. We just look at the olive.
I don't know what the
The
representation
olive is the
of all
first energy,
You've been
and
doing
then
this
when
how
that,
long
you
have
take
you
that
been?
olive and break it apart,
You have
okay?
to
So
take
that
breaks.
becomes the
Yeah,
53,
to read different things and then come
and then
back.
it takes
Because
this
sometimes you
form.
read something else,
Okay.
and you're like,
If you
"Oh
break
my
the olive
God, now I
apart,
get it." Like, and then
that's
you can go
10
backtrack
and 10
and
is
read it again.
26.
No, you
and
have,
go, "Okay,
really,
I
this
got
is
it."
A vav is-
no, you're
Four,
writing
5
out
years
you're
ago,
writing
and
out,
every
not,
time-
forget
you're
about that.
writing it
You're
out.
writing out a vav, aleph,
Yeah, but that's-
vav.
Oh,
You
you're
write out a
writing
vav,
it out.
aleph,
Always,
vav,
so-
right? So then you end
I'm
up
reading
with
this one right now.
the